Hello, everyone. Can Jerry Agrest and Bob Braitman please come up? They've changed the order somewhat, so sorry for doing this. The two gentlemen I've called up are previous winners of the President's Award. And I'd like them to join me here. Dr. Steve Davidoff of the Middle Atlantic region is the 8th individual to be honored with the FJMC's Presidential Award. The Presidential Memorial Award was created in 1965 to honor the memory of Abraham Leonard, who was an FJMC past president from 1941 to 43, and Philip Goldstein, who was president from 61 to 63. These two individuals exhibited unusually strong leadership skills and were deeply involved in the conservative movement in North American Jewry. This award has been presented to only 7 men now since established. Each recipient was recognized for his vision and leadership and skills that have advanced the FJMC as the leading organization in the conservative Masorti Judaism worldwide. The previous award winners are Arthur Buckman, Max Goldberg, Jacob Lish, Jules Porter, Jerry Agrest, Sid Katz, and Bob Braitman. Unfortunately, Steve was diagnosed with a neuromuscular disease and is currently unable to travel. Tom, can you come up for a second, please? So, Steve sent a note of thanks, and he has asked that Tom read it.
So this says, Dear Stan, as you know, that due to a recent health issue, I will be unable to attend convention and be present to receive the Presidential Award. However, that does not diminish my appreciation for the highest of FJMC honors in a city that I truly love. Rather than making this more complex process via phone call acceptance, please allow me to provide you with this note that briefly describes my feelings concerning this award. Shelley and I miss being with all of you at the convention, and we further miss the opportunity to be with many of our friends at this biennial gathering. If you will read this to the convention during the ceremony, I believe this will suffice. My profound thanks for this high honor. And I should also add that Steve called earlier in the day, talked to several of us. He is really touched by this award and greatly appreciates the recognition. And Steve, for all of us, has been a real role model. So this is a high honor for him, and he greatly appreciates it, and he's very sorry that he can't be here personally.
Thank you. And a man who needs no introduction, Rabbi Charles Simon.
So I'd like to put this into some context in terms of the conservative Masorti movement and what was then called the National Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs and became the FJMC many years later. The Presidential Award was created by a man named Arthur Buckman and 2 of his peers. Arthur was president in 1949. That's when I was born. And Arthur did a number, at that point we were part of the United Synagogue of America, not the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism. And Arthur was one of 3 people, a rabbi, a woman from the Women's League, and Arthur from the FJMC, to bring the conservative movement as far west as Pittsburgh. Okay, he was also responsible for the creation, many of you might remember the United Synagogue Pocket Calendar, and what became the Institute of Adult Studies of the United Synagogue, before it moved over to us in different guise. He created something called the Toraharians, which were men studying Torah, and he was responsible for initiating the regional retreats that many of you have in your own regions these days. The oldest one being the one that started in actually Philadelphia, but the New England retreat, the retreat, is now in its what year, 70th year? 73rd year. Okay. which is been a retreat which brings together international scholars over Father's Day weekend to work with, how many men did you have at the last retreat? 75. About 75 to 100, 150 people. That's really a wonderful, wonderful experience. I rediscovered the Presidential Award in 1983 while going through the minutes of the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, and learned that this award had been given actually initially as a way of recognizing an outgoing international president. Jules Porter was then the president of the FJMC. He was the first president we had, I believe, from California, and was responsible for the Art of Jewish Living series and a number of other events. Bart Kogan is not here, but our leadership training program and a few other things. And Jules and I recreated this, and the award was given to the people that Stan just mentioned. And it comes out at the time, and each of these men have served the conservative Masorti movement in unique ways. Stephen, as regional president, was so committed to his region and his club that he took out a life insurance policy which his club could only receive as long as they stayed a member of the FJMC. It's the only time I've ever heard of that. He was, as an educator, he helped us structure our regional training programs and was able to expand that effort so that we had a host of 30 or 40 men who were working in various regions, training club and leaders and future regional leaders. I'm guessing it was about 1984, we had a convention in the Borscht Belt, that's a part of New York State that needs a new name. And we asked his Rabbi Seymour Rosenblum, to come and talk about hearing men's voices. And Seymour led a session talking about Jacob and Esau and how the issue, it's really about how one son searches for his father's love. And out of that came the Hearing Men's Voices program. Stephen was responsible in 1986 with the publication of Our Fathers Ourselves, a series of programs designed to bring men together to talk about issues that we confront. And that's when we started to learn how to hug each other. And a few years later, the hugging got close enough that we even started to kiss each other, and we became friends, and we began to develop a culture of friendship. So in addition to that, Stephen served on all the normal boards that any president of the FJMC or any arm of the movement would serve on. It's just a matter of status and a matter of where you are at a certain moment in time. But he always remained totally committed to his club, to his region, and to the FJMC, attending meetings all over North America because whenever possible, being able to mentor many of the men who served as presidents afterwards. And as you've heard from what Tom just read, as a man who is still seriously connected to this organization and its mission, which is involving Jewish men and their families in Jewish life. And it's really an honor, and I'm sorry he's not here, for Stan to be able to present this award. Thank you. Moving right along, will Norm Kurtz please come to the stand? And while you're walking up here, if you could drag Jerry Egrist, I would appreciate it. Yeah. Where's Jerry? It's okay. So we've reached our 90th years, and we have 3 presidents who fit into that category. Harold Nissen. Harold Nissen. Harold Nissen from the New York Metro region, Larry Allen from the Middle Atlantic region, and Jerry Egrist from the Midwest region. Just a few words about Harold and about Larry. Jerry Egrist succeeded Jules Porter as president because Larry Allen, who was in line to be president of the FJMC, wanted to spend 2 more years working as a president of his congregation, Sinai Temple, outside of Philadelphia. And so Jerry stepped in, and then Larry followed him 2 years later. Larry, at that moment in time, the relationships between the various arms of the movements could have been a lot better. Okay, The Women's League had their own brownstone on the east side of Manhattan. They were a very exciting, dynamic group, and the relationship between the FJMC and the Women's League could have been better. But Larry Allen, when we went to the Women's League convention, again in the Borscht Belt, Larry gave greetings, and what he did is he read poetry to 1,200 women at a Women's League dinner. He read love poetry to 1,200 women at the FJMC convention. And all of a sudden, our relationship between the two organizations became a lot stronger. That's what he did. And in addition to that, Larry did a number of other things. He aggressively visited a number of our clubs. We would rent cars and schlep. I remember over the course of 4 or 5 days, we visited every synagogue in Connecticut. And then we went to visit every synagogue in Florida. He understood that our strength is in the personal relationships that we build with one another. And he did a wonderful job doing that. And at the same time, the other thing which Larry did was he continued in the steps of his predecessor. The Art of Jewish Living series, which was our first family education program. Hebrew literacy preceded it, but this was a different kind of an effort. Started with Jules Porter. It continued with Jerry Agrest. It continued with Larry Allen. It continued with Harold Nissen. And the FJMC was in the publishing business. We were publishing all of these books. We were going to conferences, we were selling them to libraries, but we were also training lay leaders how to teach people how to make Friday night services, how to make a Seder, how to comfort and to mourn, how to observe Hanukkah on a family level, and it was just a wonderful thing. In those days, and these days today, your organization looks at leadership, not in just 2-year terms, but in 6 to 8 year terms, where an incoming vice president is trained, goes on to be president, and then as an honorary president continues with the agenda of his predecessors. And that's what's made us what we are. Harold continued with this and did a wonderful job, and unfortunately is not well enough to come, as is Larry, who would hope to come. But we're all aging, we all understand what those things are. At this time, though, I'd like to introduce Norman, who's going to talk a little bit about Jerry.
When you're asked to present someone, and that someone is your mentor and one of your closest friends, nothing is better. Jerry Agrest, whom most of you know, is being honored this evening as the person with the longest history in FJMC. FJMC was born 90 years ago. Jerry is celebrating his 23rd birthday this coming February 29th. He was born 91 years ago. FJMC is not only about religion. FJMC is about leadership, modeling exemplary values, friendship, mentoring, and brotherhood. Jerry is the model of what the men of FJMC aspire to be. FJMC represents all that is good about the men of conservative Judaism, and Jerry is the embodiment of all that is good in men. I had the good fortune of meeting Jerry over 35 years ago when I was in my late 30s. Although having just finished serving as FJMC International President, Jerry was not done serving the FJMC. When I met Jerry, Jerry was on a mission to rebuild a virtually non-existent Midwest region. He found me, I found him, and the Midwest region was reborn. Since then, Jerry and I have traveled innumerable miles together to conventions, retreats, trainings, you name it, and Jerry and I have been there together. And I couldn't ask for a better partner in my involvement with this organization. I'm not sure he knew then that he would, for the next 35 years, and God willing for much longer, be friend, mentor, leader, advisor, and inspiration to so many of us in this room this evening. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you my friend, Dr. Jerome Agrest.
I'm going to change this.
Well, as I said, the men's club is a little younger than I am. And I don't remember much of those beginning years. I was still suffering a little bit from the circumcision, but what I'd like to do at this point, since this is really a history, and I'd like to tell a little bit of the history of the Federation, which I think Chuck Simon already touched on, but give you some dates just to see where our Federation started, where it was, and it actually, from my researching, the men's club's first general or get-together was held at the Astor Hotel in New York City on May 20th of 1929. Edward Weinrib of Mount Vernon, New York, was elected the first president, and Rabbi Samuel Cohn, who was director of the United Synagogue, started the FJMC really as a department of the United Synagogue. And the purpose was and is to involve young men in Jewish values as well as synagogue involvement, as it goes on forever, I hope. Those were difficult days. They went through depression, and they had no office, no staff, and something that I know about for the 50 years I've been around, no budget. That worked. Actually, Rabbi Cohn prepared the first men's club manual somewhere around 1937, I think. And the first president, actual president, was Weinrib, and he, and a couple years later, had two other men. Also, Theodore Karnas of Mount Vernon, New York, and Louis Schwartz of New York City. And these three men really served the national, it was called National Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, until about 1941. In 1941, the Federation was reborn. Philadelphia was really the stronghold of conservative Judaism, and a group consisting of Abraham Leonard, Milton Berger, Dr. David Hoffman, and Barnett Lieberman brought a new vision to our movement, and an Abe Leonard was elected president at that time. Some of you people may come from that area, and the names may be familiar. The big thing that started, the Torch started magazine, or well, it was a pamphlet at the time. In that year, around between 1941 and 1943, I found that we had actually 5 clubs and 12,000 men. That goes back. 1943, Milberger became president, and it was at that time that the seminary, in their good graces, gave us the Rabbi Joel Geffen. And Rabbi Joel Geffen was with us for about 30 years, I think. He traveled for the seminary, and amidst his travels, he pushed for men's clubs, getting men's clubs together, raising some funds for men's club, and he really got us off the ground. He was one of my mentors. I don't know if I would be standing here now if not for Rabbi Geffen, who convinced me that this was the organization that was very important to the movement, and that I should take much more interest in it. And he became a real true friend, There's a couple of things that are interesting. Regions that we started, and regions really started back in about 1945. And it was really at that time Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Boston. They were part of regions that we had. Our regions, of course, grown, as you know, and we have many more regions now. It was, and we operated pretty much in that vein for many, many years. When I'll go back to a little personal. My first convention was in 1964 at the Concord Hotel. My club, which I had affiliated about 2 years prior because at that time was an older man by the name of Menny London, who became an international president, convinced me that our newborn synagogue should have a men's club that's affiliated. And we affiliated, I believe, in 61 or 62, and we won a torch award that following 2 years. And so 1964, the president of our club asked if I would come with him to the Concord Hotel and receive the reward. And this was 1964. In fact, I still carry my badge that I got in 1964 as a delegate to the convention. It's a 35th annual convention at that time, and somehow it's been kind of hung around the house for me. At that time, Federation convention was altogether different than what we have today. It was really New Yorkers, and the two of us came from Chicago, and it's like we came from another country. We were really, it was just the two of us. It took a while, though we did have some representation because we had a man by the name of Albert Jacobson, who was one of the first presidents from the western part of the country, which was Chicago, in 54. 56, we had Abraham Satosky from Detroit. And so after that year, we were no longer considered an East Coast organization. And as some of you know, we've held conventions all across the country. We were in Florida in 72. I know we were in Montreal in, I don't remember what year, but 1976 it says, yeah. Montreal was 1976. We've been in Toronto at least once before, and I think it was 2001, okay, yeah. And we are really we're the only conservative national organization to have leadership outside the New York area, or even travel as far as convention, leaving the East Coast. So we've really got our people from all over the country rather than sticking to the East Coast type of thing. It was really altogether different thing. We did, we hired our first executive director in 1978, and then hired Chuck Simon, Rabbi Simon, I think in 82, if I remember.
Can't forget it.
Can't forget for guessing, okay. You shouldn't, I can forget. 1982, which was held at a meeting in Philadelphia, in an apartment of Sam Berlin, who was, I think, a past president at that time, and Joe Domenkin was there. And we met, there were a group of, I don't know, maybe about 10 of us who met in his apartment, and interviewed Rabbi Simon, and decided that this was the person that we needed at that time. And I think that's been proven to be a positive move on the part of the Federation. We developed lots and lots of programs over the years, and the thing, my own personal involvement is that we are probably, we are the only truly volunteer organization that operates as we do on such a large scale, and the impact that we're making on the conservative movement. It should impress all of you. I know no organization that has the type of men and volunteers that we do to do the work that we do. This convention is a good example of what we can do, and we will continue to do. I've been involved, as you know, as I told you, since the early 60s. I hope to keep up for a couple more years yet, and continue to grow and see this organization continue to succeed with new innovations is what we do. We certainly have made a difference in the movement. When I was president, I had the privilege of sitting on the seminary board and Merkaz and OMETS and so many organizations, United Synagogue. And there's none of these organizations that fulfilled the needs that I felt we needed. We started, I think they still having meetings within the movement between the seminary and Rabbinical and United Synagogue. And in my days, United Synagogue, I guess they thought that they were the leadership. Anyway, if we sat at a meeting and if we came up with something they didn't like, why, they just got up and walked out. We had very difficult times in those days. And from what I'm hearing, progression is working, and we are getting to work together closer and closer. I would like to see us all working together. We happen to be one of the greatest grassroots movements, groups in our movement. And I don't think that United Synagogue, the seminary, the Rabbinical Assembly, Campus Assembly can do the work that we do right at the grass levels. And I thank you all and hope you will continue to work and keep us growing as we have in the past. Thank you.
So I want to tell you a story. It's really, well, I know there's been some, everybody here is familiar with the Yom HaShoah Yellow Candle program, and we all know that the programs initially began here in an attempt to rescue Syrian Jewry. That's what Jules Certain and Morty Pullen and a few other people from Bethesda tried to do. And they took, but we had a young man named Joe Whitaker who lived in Peabody, Massachusetts, who took this program and brought it to his congregation, to his men's club. There are 400 members in his synagogue. He found a guy in Brooklyn who modified the candle from Bethesda and made it into a yellow yahrzeit candle, which many of you might be familiar with. And he created a label and put it on the label and got a box and a bag, and he sent it out before Yom HaShoah to every member of the 400 of his synagogue with a little note saying, he created a blessing, which hadn't been done in 2,000 years, I have to say that. And we kind of corrected that a few years later. But with also a little note saying, take this and put it in your window and light it, and think about Yom HaShoah. And what happened was, because and send us your notes and your comments, what happened was he enclosed a self-addressed return envelope with a stamp on it. So when Jews received self-addressed envelopes with a stamp on it, they put in checks. And so all of a sudden, the program started to have income. So the club took the money they had received, because this was a gift and he was underwriting it, and they bought books on the Shoah and placed them in all the public libraries in the North Shore of Boston. And then he applied for a torch award. And his club won the torch award, and Jerry was president at the time, and walked out and said, I'm going to make something of this. Okay, so the following year, it became a regional effort. And the year after that, it became a national effort. And the year after that, we were able to bring the candle back with some negotiation back into Montreal and Toronto and into Canada. And this was all being run by volunteers. So we had one volunteer from the Michigan sub-region of what was then the Great Lakes region, named Harvey Nussbaum. Harvey was a university professor and taught public relations and business. And Harvey was in charge of the logistics of this program. So for those of you who know the program, you know that you have to order your candles very early, and you need to receive them sometimes a month, 2 months before Yom HaShoah, so you can arrange to have them packed and to get the letters done so they can be delivered or mailed out to your congregations. So this was fine. So Harvey's, it's November, and all the material goes out, and then December, we start to get phone calls saying, when am I going to get my candles? When am I going to get my candles? And the office was told to respond, don't worry, it's early, you have time. If you don't get your candles by the end of January, then we'll have a problem. Well, January came, and January went, and the candles weren't being shipped. So there's a little guy, there was a gentleman, a Hasidic gentleman, in Brooklyn by the name of Arnie, who manufactured these candles. And so every Friday morning I would get on the phone and I would call him and say, Arnie, where are the candles? And he would say, we're having a little trouble right now with the paraffin, but don't worry, God will provide. So now we have orders for 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 candles. Harvey starts to get these phone calls at all hours of the night. His wife is going crazy. 20,000 candles, 25,000 candles. We've now moved into the end of February, 30,000 candles. And every Friday I call Arnie and say, Arnie, where are the candles? And he says, don't worry, we're still having the same problem, but don't worry, God will provide. 40,000 candles, 50,000 candles. I'm getting calls from his children saying, please help my father, I think he's gonna have a heart attack. 60,000 candles. This is all going on, and I'm calling every Friday, I'm calling Friday. So it's now like we're down to the deadline. I mean, if the candles don't arrive in the next 2 weeks, for everybody, they're never gonna get them out in time for Yom HaShoah, because it's practically Pesach already. One Friday, so one of those Friday mornings, I get a phone call from Arnie. He says, Rabbi, I have good news. And I have bad news. So I says, Arnie, so what's the good news? He says, the good news is we've got we solved the problem with the paraffin. We've got all the candles are made. They're all labeled, you know, and they're in this country. That's fabulous. He said, now we make the candles in Israel, but in those days we were making them in the Virgin Islands. So what's the bad news? He says, they're stuck on a ship on Baltimore Harbor with there's a Teamster strike going on. But don't worry. So I got on the phone, and who's here from Baltimore? He's like, Muna Bethel. I know that somebody's, okay. So I got on the phone, I called my two colleagues, Joel Zaman and Mark Loeb, you know, in Baltimore. I said, I have a situation. We don't have problems in the FJMC, we have situations. I have a situation. Your candles that you ordered? He said, yes, where are they? I said, they're on a ship in Baltimore, in your port. Can you do something about it? He said, no problem. Let me see, I'll make a few phone calls. Sunday morning, I get a call in my home from Arnie. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. God has provided. The candles are now in New York. They can all go out. So I didn't have the heart to tell him that God works through conservative Jews. And this happened when Jerry was president. But what Jerry didn't tell you is that his predecessor, Jules Porter, Jerry and I, and a person who worked at the seminary named Michael Greenbaum, created something during his term of office called the Leadership Council of Conservative Judaism. And this organization lasted up to about 12 years ago, and we would meet 2 to 3 times a year. Initially, it was just the Women's League, Men's Club, Rabbinical Assembly, United Synagogue, and the seminary, 5 organizations. Over time, we were able to bring in other organizations in the movement because we really wanted people to think and to work together. And we accomplished a number of very important things. We did better at the World Zionist Congress, and by the way, Jerry was the first person from our organization to go and lead a session at the World Zionist Congress many years ago. We produced a catalog of books the movement was publishing so everybody could see what was going on. We coordinated movement calendars, which was a huge, huge thing within the organizations that are composed of our movement. And we began to develop some joint policies together relating to intermarriage, which we call demographic change today, as well as conversion and other issues where we needed guidance and we really were a think tank together. And it worked very well. And Jerry led that, I believe, for 2 years as president. It was a rotating president between the 5 organizations. So your organization has done a lot. I know you've heard it over the last couple of days, but in terms of our creativity, our innovation, most importantly, I believe, the power we have on a grassroots level to make a difference. It's what we do, what you do in your synagogue, and how we exchange ideas. We help our synagogues grow is how we help our movement grow and our families grow. And that's our challenge. And frankly, it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have people like this one and this one, and Norm, and the other people who are here, and the regional presidents, and the club presidents, and the people who someday will be club presidents, being able to make that difference. Thank you very much.